Hello, I am Regina McCann-Hess, president of Forge Wealth Management, and welcome to our Women in Wealth series. Today, I have a new friend with me. And Suzy, can you tell us who you are, what you do, and what you love about what you do?
Amazing. Well, I'm Suzy Rosenstein. I've been working in the midlife coach space now for, oh my gosh, it's going to be 10 years very soon in a few weeks. And I work with midlife women over 50. And what typically happens is that they're feeling stuck and maybe a little confused about what they want. They're for sure not living their best life. And through
Mhm.
our work together and coaching, I help them learn to love their lives again.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. And I was mentioning to you prior to us, hitting record, like I know a couple years with over the past couple of years, I've had so many questions about just different things about hitting midlife. And, you think Dr. Google knows everything, right? But there's not a lot of information on there for women to go find, good quality information. So this is really, a treat to have you on the podcast to talk about these kind of things. So thank you for being here.
Well, thanks for asking. For sure, if you're feeling
Yeah.
any of this weird stuff about aging and midlife, you're not alone.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Now, why is it so common for midlife women to feel stuck at this age?
Well, a lot of things kind of go into it. And first, I would also say that it's not sometimes it's stage more than age, but it's usually a combination of the two. So we're getting
Hmm.
older and there's a ton of stigma about aging and what that
True.
means, right? And then
Yeah.
in terms of stage, a lot of times you've been in a long-term job. And if you've been in a long-term job, you might start to feel like, oh, maybe I'm meant for more, or I'm a little bored, or I want to give back in a different way. Maybe your values or priorities have changed. And then the other thing that can happen to so many of us, two other areas. One of them is the kid thing. So empty nest is looming, or you're in, and it was kind of surprising. It's kind of
Yeah.
like breastfeeding. Nobody really tells you the details. And I find that so many women are surprised by menopause and what empty nest really is, or at least the transition. Like it gets a little surprising right at the beginning, until you make an adjustment. And then, that whole transition to not really knowing who you are anymore and
Mm.
how you're going to show up in the world. So that identity shift, if it's a milestone birthday, a long-term job, or a kid thing, or even your parents passing, some kind of a wake-up call, what happens is that you usually feel the need to reflect, but you may not understand really how to reflect or how to assess or what's even possible for you anymore. So, all those things about not putting yourself first and focusing on other things for 20, 30 years, there's a shift, and you're like, uh oh, now what?
Yeah, for sure. And we do that a lot as women. We always put everyone else's needs before our own, before we even take care of ourselves. And then
Definitely.
even before we have kids, we're so and so's sister, and then we're so and so's kids, and then we become so and so's spouse, and then we're our kids' parents. And like you said, now you're empty nesting or getting closer to empty nesting, and then that's where that identity, I guess, comes in. I haven't hit that yet, but I see it looming, you know.
Yeah, it feels like
Um,
it's looming. I've had lots
yeah.
of clients come to me trying to anticipate and figure out some of the stuff before it happens because they recognize that it's a substantial change.
Oh, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure. So how can people prepare for that and, maybe regret proof their life?
Well, I love using that term regret proofing because there are some things that you can do. If you think about what does regret proof mean, I think it's that all the things that you can do or say or think about or plan to try to reduce the risk of having regrets. A lot of people have regrets because they they just weren't prepared. So I'm so glad
Mhm.
you asked a question about being prepared. And a lot of it is just thinking about what you want. And
Right.
that's the thing that so many of us are uncomfortable doing because we haven't been number one. We haven't been first for ages. Really, it could be 30 years. And
Oh,
so
easily.
we're just not comfortable with it. And a lot of times when you get an idea, it's like, ooh, I don't know, that's too much. That feels too indulgent. What are people going to think? I feel, ooh, I don't feel comfortable even articulating that or spending valuable time and resources on me, so all that stuff comes up. But if you don't even allow yourself to think about what you want, you're highly likely to have regrets.
Oh, for
So,
sure. And then, yeah,
yeah,
go
just
ahead. I'm sorry.
raising awareness is a huge part of that.
Yeah, and I guess that's also where the mindfulness comes in.
Totally. So, a lot of the stuff about mindfulness, many of us have magnets or something on the fridge or on a pillowcase that we should be more mindful and more in the present moment, but we really don't know what that means. And I like to think about mindfulness as really just becoming way more aware of what you're actually thinking and how it relates to the way you feel, and then what you end up doing as a result of those feelings. So, most of us are walking around not really clear on what we're thinking. We're in autopilot mode. We're busy. We're very busy. Aren't you busy? We're very,
Oh
very busy.
my goodness. It's
We're so busy.
ridiculous. Like, and this is like that saying is the older you get, the faster it goes. It's just constant.
It's constant, and then we buy into it too. And so we could be less busy if we thought about it differently, if we knew our priorities, all kinds of ways that we can create a life that's more, this sounds really coachy, but like in alignment with what we actually want. But there's
Mhm.
this autopilot way of functioning and so much distraction with tech and social media and all that stuff. And life is flying. As we're aging, we're literally watching life flying. So the more that you can get clear about what it is you're thinking and start noticing the way you're thinking and how it's affecting your life, the more you can do about it. So you can
Oh,
learn to think
yeah.
on purpose. You can learn to appreciate what kind of mindset helps you and what kind of mindset gets in your way.
Fabulous advice. Absolutely fabulous
Actually want to say
advice.
something about the kid thing. So with the empty nest looming part, one of the things that I find so helpful, because it's very scary when I started to freak out the night before. I mean, freak out, small letters,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
caps, but I started to really feel, oh my God, did I teach him how to cook? Did I teach him how to do this or do that? Does he know that he has to phone home if anything bad happens? Because he didn't. But anyway, um, uh, it's not this is what I advise and coach around this is to think about all the ways you can think about your kids growing up and out. And if you're not careful, you think about, oh, it's over,
Mm,
rather than, oh, it's a beginning. And I can
right,
learn how I want to relate to my young adults on purpose. And that
right.
you're going to have that phase of life longer than you had the kid in your house phase.
Yeah.
So
And
really
and you
think, how do I
can
want to show up that way?
right, and you can look at it as it's a new adventure. You can relate to your kids as adults and do things with them that are more adult related. And just because they are an adult or out of the house doesn't mean your relationship ends with them. It becomes a different relationship.
Yeah, and it can really be adventurous because I don't know, not everybody is the same level of adventure at the same time. So it
So
could be a
true.
part where their adventure picks up and you want to get more adventurous so you can lean into that with them.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, that should be fun. That should be fun. But it's all that change, that could be coming down the line. And the great thing is, through my clients and through my friends, I learn from them like what they're going through. And I ask, I have my mom friends and my dad friends that, you ask those questions. And then the midlife stuff, you ask that, you see what they're going through and you just try to learn from it,
I remember
you know.
too, my neighbor had kids about, I don't know, 5 or 7 years older than mine. And I was always watching how often they came. They came back home. So it's like they leave, but there's a phase there. It could be a few years where they're coming back and then leaving and then coming back. So they're not really gone for a pretty, I don't know, about 10 years is what I've been noticing with the coming and going. And that's kind of fun too, because then when they come back after they've lived away, they know how to cook. They have relationships that are some people that you don't know. They have so much more independence and confidence. And it's just a completely different experience when they come home after they've been away. So there's that
Right.
potential too.
Right, and they appreciate you more, for
I think
sure. I know
so.
I did with my
Yeah.
mom. I totally appreciated her more once I was out on my own and living.
And also, I'm really starting to appreciate how much I can learn from them. They
Yeah,
know so
yeah,
much about cooking and barbecuing and strategic games and sometimes politics. Like there are just so many topics that they've learned so much about that I just don't even have. I don't even know that they know that stuff. You know?
yeah,
That's fun
yeah,
too.
yeah. Hold on one second. I'm sorry. Okay, sorry. Gotta make sure they took the dog with them because I
Oh
have to go to
no.
a meeting downtown. So I'm like, they gotta take the dog. Oh my gosh. So let me get back here. Okay, so I'm going to ask the question about your shoe size because that has me curious how what that's about.
Okay.
Okay, so I was listening to your podcast and looking at your websites, and a question I have to ask is why should you act your shoe size instead of your age?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked me about that because when I was thinking about it, I started to giggle. I'm like, oh, I'm definitely gonna share this because it really gets you thinking. So think about what it was like for you when you were 7. What were you doing? How were you feeling when you were on the playground or when you were playing in the yard? We used to be, we used to
Mhm.
go outside for hours and hours and come back by dark. Do you remember how you felt?
Invigorated. Like I just went out and like I can't imagine letting my kids do what I did. Like
Yeah,
you would just go out and you would come, like you said, you come back when it's dark or when dinner time is or whatever, and you just played your little heart out, explored and had adventures.
exactly. Like curious, playful, silly. Now, would you describe that about yourself now?
No, no, too serious, too set my ways, too like, is it on my calendar? Right? Is it
Exactly.
not on my calendar? I don't know what to do.
That's exactly it. And if you really think about that kind of stuff, uh, most clients that I work with and what I hear back from people listening to the podcast is they want to have more fun. Fun is missing.
Hmm.
The kinds of friendships that we had when we were younger, friendships are different now. We're busier. We don't have that kind of time to play without purpose, to laugh and just have a giant crack up, to be curious about something that's not how we define productive. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it absolutely does.
And
Absolutely
so
does.
that kind of stuff is good for your soul and it has to do with
Mhm.
happiness. And one of the main things that people have regrets about is that they didn't allow themselves to be happy. It's huge.
Good.
It's a
That's
huge thing.
good.
So, right? So when you allow yourself to be happy, it was much easier for you to conjure those kinds of feelings up with the way you were thinking about life when you were younger. So I'm not saying be irresponsible and be skippity doo dah all the time, but a little more skippity doo dah is probably not a bad idea.
I hear you. All right. I'm gonna have to work on that part. Too serious on my side.
Well, the other thing that really comes up with that is how easy it was for us to be more in the present moment when we were young. And
Yeah.
now I mentioned it briefly before, but we're so distracted and we feel so busy that it can be much more difficult to stay focused and present. And as kids, we were able to do that more.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I have another question I'm very curious about because I work with a lot of entrepreneurs and I am, of course, an entrepreneur, but um, is there a difference in managing midlife issues as an entrepreneur?
Well, different issues come up because you're running your own business. And
Hmm.
so when you're running your own business, we like to think we have more flexibility. And in some ways we do, but not in all the ways. We don't take a sick day so much the same way that we did when we were employed by somebody else. And I find with midlife women, um, I'm going to be launching another podcast soon that is interviewing women entrepreneurs about how midlife gets in the way of running their business the way they want to. So it
Oh,
is called
love it.
Women in the Middle Entrepreneurs. It is coming soon. And so there's a few things that keep coming up, and one of them is energy. So
Mhm.
energy becomes an issue when you're older. A lot of menopause, perimenopause, postmenopause, a lot of women who have the pressure and responsibility to run a business are really feeling an energy drain. And it's not for everybody doesn't experience it in the same way, but that has come up a lot. Another thing that comes up a lot is um, just thinking you have flexibility, but you may not have the flexibility. Caring for older parents, when that kind of stuff comes up, often it's a surprise. Something just gets worse, or all of a sudden somebody can't live on their own, or you need to go out of town to help do some problem solving or some care. And so that kind of thing tends to come up. Sometimes I have lots of clients who are dealing with it now, and it's a progression of
Hmm.
responsibility. But when that kind of stuff comes up, if your job is portable, it can be easier, but still a lot of things need to be in place for you to be able to accommodate that kind of thing. And another thing that comes up is pressure and guilt around spending time with grandchildren the way you want to. So it's either
Oh,
guilt
okay.
about the grandchildren or guilt about the job. But I that has come up a lot where there's a point where your kids are older and they're starting their own families, and you are very motivated to spend a lot of time or time to spend time
Yeah.
with them. And sometimes they're out of town. And so, again, all of this midlife work is about creating an intentional life, an intentional life, an intentional business, and then doing what you can on purpose to create that for yourself. So, with being an entrepreneur, when you start to realize some of this stuff that we just talked about, you also realize that you need to run your business a little differently. You may need to put more systems in place. You may need to have more automation. You may need to have different staff that do things that you used to do. You may not even want to do certain things anymore. And you may come to terms with the idea that some of those things that you did could be done by somebody else. So there's some things that you can do. I've had clients recently tell me they don't want to start their day till 11. And again, because of energy or because of morning routines and priorities for self-care, you may want to shift your day. Some
Hmm.
some people like to work at night. So whatever it is, again, it comes back to you really
Yeah.
appreciating what it is that you want, so that when
Right.
that thought comes up, you hear it, you pay attention, because you're valuing putting yourself first. You want to know what you really want. And it's not so easy to figure that out. And it's not so easy to slow down enough that you can hear and catch what you're thinking.
Mm.
So finding those disconnects is a lot of what goes on in coaching, is when you're
That's
saying something, you think that you believe something, but you really don't. And
that
the way you can tell what you believe is like, look around, you're creating. What you're creating is related to the way you're thinking.
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice. Yeah, and stay within your passion, stay within, listen to your body, listen to when your energy is flowing. That's a great prospect to think about.
It can be.
So,
Yeah, it can be
yeah,
for sure.
yeah. So I am sure there's plenty of people want to learn more about you and your program. So where would they go find out more information about you or your programs?
So the easiest place to get a hold of me is my website, which is suzyrosenstein.com. And I have something free because this was so much fun. And I really appreciate the questions you asked and everything. But if you thought this kind of topic lit you up and that you're really craving more information like this, I have a freebie for you, which is it's a gift that it's a podcast related gift, really. So you can just get this quick download of 12 top episodes that give you secrets to how to love your life again based on these really, really common topics. And so to get it, you just head over to www.freepodcastbundle.com. You get this nice, easy download. You get the 12 episodes with little players right there, so you can just start listening. And that's like an entree into this world. And if you want more, you can reach out to me personally, or you can always also dive into my podcast, Women in the Middle.
And I will tell everyone that I did listen to Women in the Middle, and that's how I found Suzy, and her podcast is fantastic.
Oh,
So
thank
definitely
you.
go take a listen.
There's
Yeah,
over
very cool.
300 episodes just waiting for you.
Woo! Oh my goodness, that's a lot of material. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you today.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah. And thank you everyone else for joining us again. I'm Regina McCann Hess. My website is forgewealth.com. You can follow me on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube at Forge Wealth. and LinkedIn is Regina McCann Hess. Our call to action today is go to listen to Suzy's web podcast. I'm sorry, and go to that website and download the 12 pack bundle because I think you'll have some great information in there. And other than that, make it a great day. Thank you, everyone.